Your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit, brings you breaking news. North America's latest clash isn't about oil, it's about water. President Trump has openly suggested tapping Canada's rivers like a giant faucet, even as Washington stalls talks on the Columbia River Treaty and stirs fears across the Great Lakes. But Prime Minister Mark Carney is holding firm. No transfers, no concessions. Beneath the politics lies a harsh truth. Farms, factories, chip fabs, and car plants all run on reliable water and power. From treaties to tariffs, we trace the connections. Here are the developments. Flashpoint at the border, treaties, faucets, and frozen talks. For decades, U.S.-Canada water management has rested on two cornerstone agreements. The Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, GLWQA, first signed in 1972 and modernized in 2012, safeguards drinking water for tens of millions while coordinating on invasive species, climate impacts, and phosphorus. Quietly, it keeps a third of North America's economy stable. Out west, the Columbia River Treaty, born after mid-century floods, co-manages hydropower, irrigation, and flood control across a basin powering towns, factories, and data centers from Montana to Oregon. But stability is faltering. In early 2025, Washington froze negotiations to finalize treaty updates, alarming British Columbia officials and utilities dependent on predictable flows. Trump's faucet remark, seen as targeting BC's rivers, stoked sovereignty concerns. Layer on tariff threats, and water becomes weaponized leverage. Why should automakers care? Because treaties shape hydropower supply, intake permits, and industrial planning. When talks stall, car plants delay expansions, chip fabs hedge bets, and supply chains brace for drought-driven disruptions. And that brings us to the next critical link: how water and electricity shape the silicon and steel of modern industry. Water, power, and silicon. Why factories can't run dry. The Columbia River Basin supplies roughly a third to 40% of America's hydroelectric power, fueling AI data centers, aluminum, and the chip supply chain that underpins modern industry. Cheap, reliable hydropower made the Pacific Northwest a magnet for power-hungry infrastructure. But if treaty talks stall or coordination falters, grid planners lose critical flexibility just as demand surges from EVs and data centers. Semiconductor fabs show the risk most clearly. A leading-edge fab consumes millions of gallons of ultra-pure water daily for wafer cleaning. Arizona's TSMC site alone uses 4.75 million gallons per day and is racing to recycle 85 to 90%. Even so, uncertainty forces fabs to stockpile, build redundancies, or delay expansion, rippling into auto chip supply. For automakers, this isn't background noise. Vehicles are increasingly software-defined, loaded with sensors, inverters, and controllers. When fabs ration water, car makers ration features. The last chip crunch idled plants and stripped trim lines. Without stable treaties, manufacturers carry heavier contingency costs and face greater production risk. Before we dive into the next challenge, do us a favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to Piston Pundit. It helps us fuel more updates for enthusiasts like you. Now let's steer east to the Great Lakes, where a different water battle is unfolding. Great Lakes on edge, cuts, blooms, and 40 million taps. The Great Lakes supply drinking water, shipping routes, and industry for over 40 million people. The GLWQA, updated in 2012, expanded commitments on invasive species, climate resilience, and habitat. Its strength depends on robust science, buoys, labs, models, and staff to track conditions. But recent NOAA funding cuts, including at the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab, have weakened monitoring, delaying algal bloom warnings, and leaving utilities with less reliable data. For automakers, the stakes are real. This region is a manufacturing supercluster where paint shops, casting, and final assembly all need steady intake water and discharge permits. When algal toxins or silt spikes go undetected, plants slow or even halt, disrupting supply chains. The GLWQA was designed to prevent a return to the 1960s, when rivers burned and fish died, conditions unthinkable for today's auto hub. And water challenges don't stop at the lakes. Let's zoom in on how agriculture and assembly lines clash over the same precious resource. Agriculture versus assembly, the water math behind your car. Water scarcity squeezes the auto industry from both ends. Upstream, agriculture supplies bio-based chemicals, rubber, and logistics, all vulnerable to crop volatility. Downstream, factories are heavy users, especially paint shops and surface treatments. Newer plants highlight big savings, tens of millions of gallons annually, but they still depend on stable municipal supply and predictable discharge rules. When regions ration or raise rates, costs spike just as automakers try to hold sticker prices. Debates continue over vehicle water footprints. Older studies suggested massive totals, while recent reports show assembly-only use in the low thousands of liters per car thanks to recycling. What's clear is that paint dominates demand, and automakers are investing in fixes. Toyota's Kentucky paint facility upgrade, for instance, expands output while cutting water use, a model of risk reduction through technology. Then there's silicon. Semiconductor fabs remain thirsty even with recycling, forcing regions chasing chips and cars to overinvest in reuse and aquifer replenishment. Work made harder when water diplomacy stalls. Which leads us to the political battlefield, where Ottawa is making its stance crystal clear. Ottawa's line in the sand, and auto industry fallout. Prime Minister Carney's refusal to sell bulk water isn't just politics, it's strategy. Canada is declaring freshwater a national asset governed by treaties, science, Indigenous rights, and domestic law, not a bargaining chip. For the U.S., that means no Canadian fix for Western droughts and renewed urgency to modernize the Columbia River Treaty. Without updates, both countries face greater volatility in hydropower, flood control, and ecosystems as climate shocks grow. For automakers, the lesson is blunt. Treat water scarcity as structural, not temporary. Chip supply chains must cluster where municipal reuse is reliable, and grids aren't hostage to diplomacy. Plants need aggressive recycling and chemistry swaps in paint and coating lines, the biggest lever for cutting water risk. Great Lakes monitoring must remain funded, since the same science protecting tap water stabilizes industrial permits. Optics matter too. Demanding Canada's water while stalling cooperation rattles investors. The real winners, Ontario, Michigan, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, the Southwest, will prove water resilience with transparency, not rhetoric. And that sets the stage for our closing lap, where the verdict is clear. Final lap. Water, the new option package. Strip away the rhetoric and a simple truth emerges. The future of North America's auto industry is chained to its water future. A stalled Columbia Treaty, threats to Great Lakes science, and saber-rattling over sovereignty all add hidden costs to every car, every chip, every job. Carney's defiance isn't just politics. It's a reminder that dreams of bulk water pipelines belong in fiction, not factory planning. For Detroit, Ontario, and the Sun Belt, the winning formula is clear. Airtight recycling, resilient power grids, and treaty-backed governance. If Washington and Ottawa rebuild trust by finalizing a Columbia framework and fully honoring Great Lakes commitments, factories can expand with confidence. If not, expect pricier builds, choppier supply, and investors steering toward regions with clearer rules. The next great performance upgrade won't be measured in horsepower, it'll be in hydropower and in the treaties that guarantee it. And before we wrap up, let's put the wheel in your hands. Do you think Carney's water stance strengthens Canada's auto future, or does it put cross-border supply chains at risk? Should automakers invest more heavily in plant-level water recycling, even if it raises costs short-term? And how do you see semiconductor water demand shaping the next decade of car production? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love to hear your take. Don't forget to subscribe to Piston Pundit so you never miss the next vehicle update or industry deep dive. Thanks for watching and see you in the next pit stop. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.